Now, even after this short lesson, you can see that serverless has its own pros and cons. So one of the pros of using serverless is that it is easy to develop. All we need to do is to provide code that should be executed, deployed to AWS, and the rest is taken care of. Now, also scalability and reliability are provided out of the box. We don't need to configure anything for that. You could also see that AWS Lambda has very low cost. It has a generous free tier. And even when this free tier is over, the cost for invocation is very small. And all of that allows us to focus on the business value. We don't need to think about details of our infrastructure, and we can just focus on what application we want to deliver. Now, there are also some cons for using serverless and AWS Lambda specifically. As we talked before, it's not a silver bullet. Now, I would say that the con number one is that it's not for heavy workloads. Now, if your Lambda function needs to process a lot of data and it's just crunching CPU cycles all the time, it will be easier to just buy a single EC2 machine and run your application using this machine instead of paying for Lambda. Now, as you could see, there are some platform limitations that restrict for how long our function can run, how much RAM it can have, and how much data it can store on a disk. So this can limit the number of applications that you can implement with AWS Lambda. And the last one is vendor locking. So arguably when you use products like AWS Lambda or Google Functions, your applications are now more tightly coupled to the infrastructure provided by a service provider. So it may be a bit harder to migrate your application from function as a service to other platforms, but we will talk about some strategies to avoid that in one of the later lessons. Now, I also must say that serverless is constantly changing. This is a new field, so the limitations that we've described in this course may easily be changed in a year or two. For example, service providers constantly improve their platforms so functions can run longer, they can use more memory, and they can use more CPU power. And they also implement additional services to store state. So for example, Amazon provided an update to their services so we can work with WebSockets. And WebSockets require persistent connections, something that Lambda functions can have by definition. And also you can take a look at a new product from Microsoft called Azure Durable Functions that allows us to write stateful functions in serverless environment. So this is also an interesting vector where serverless technologies are moving at the moment.